It all really started from the idea of hospitality in England hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So during Christmas time, you can imagine during the agrarian age in England when people were working on farms, it was a very stratified society. A lot of people in lower classes working in some sort of agricultural way for lords who own large areas of land. As we all know, living in the North Country, it starts to come to winter, there's not much farming going on anymore. And so these people really didn't have a way to make money and to support themselves during this time. And so, in part due to the religious aspects as well, this idea of hospitality began taking root in England. The idea that during Christmas, people of upper classes were supposed to give back to people of lower classes that worked for them during the year. As this evolved, you began to see people trying to find new and different ways to make money during the holidays who were of lower classes. And one way that people have done this for hundreds of years is to make music. The very best would be hired by these lords, and they would play during their banquets during the holidays. But for those who weren't able to get hired, they began to form singing groups, caroling groups. They would go from house to house and take advantage, I don't mean that in a bad way, but take advantage of this idea of hospitality where they would sing and there would be an expectation in exchange for the singing. Really, in part what got me interested in this subject is there is this type of song called the Luck Visit song that was sung by many of these groups. And we all actually know the Luck Visit songs, even though we might not realize it. The most famous one is "We Wish You a Merry Christmas," and so the lyrics of "We Wish You a Merry Christmas," we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, and the Happy New Year. And that's the first phase of these songs, where they are blessing or good luck to the person that they're singing to. But then it turns a little, and there's some sort of demand for payment. So now bring us some figgy pudding, bring us some figgy pudding, bring us some figgy pudding, and bring it right here. And then it turns a little bit more, and you see the third phase. The third phase of these songs is usually some sort of implicit threat. We won't go until we got some, we won't go until we got some, we won't go until we got some, so bring it out here. And many songs of this Luck Visit tradition seem to follow these three phases of blessing, demand for payment, followed finally by some sort of implicit threat. Not dissimilar to our trick-or-treating. We hear these things in these songs, and we don't know why they're there exactly. I mean, we wish you a Merry Christmas. You listen to that and you're like, what's this? First of all, what is figgy pudding? Let's start right there. What's this? And why are they demanding it? And why aren't they going to leave until they get it? But there is a history behind it, which I think is really cool. And I think that's what's really interesting about these songs and about this tradition.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way.
Christmas carols. You either love them or you hate them, and there's no Christmas carol quite like Jingle Bells. It's been covered by the Stars,
Jingle bells, jingle all the way.
parodied and satirized, and even has its own jokey lyrics.
Jingle bells, Batman smells, Robin lays an egg.
But Jingle Bells actually has the most surprising story of any Christmas carol. Originally, it wasn't called Jingle Bells, and it had nothing to do with Christmas at all. One Horse Open Sleigh, a jaunty melody for the American holiday of Thanksgiving, was written by James Lord Pierpont in 1857. He was a songwriter best otherwise known for being the uncle of John Pierpont Morgan, the founder of J.P. Morgan, the massive investment bank, and for sadly supporting slavery and the South during the American Civil War. Given the content of the song's lyrics, historians think it's unlikely that it was intended to be a song for family-friendly occasions. The original Jingle Bells sure has some lyrics, ranging from a verse about a lean and lank horse having a crash to this amazing verse where the narrator falls over in the snow and
a gent was riding by in a one-horse open sleigh. He left us there, I sprawling lie, but quickly drove away.
Because we all know that laughing at injured people in the snow sure is the spirit of Christmas. Jingle Bells has even changed its tune over the years. Originally, the song's chorus was a bit more complicated than it is today, even melancholic.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what joy it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what joy it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
So you can see how over time, the kinks have kind of been hammered out. Today, the chorus is just super simple major chords like 1s, 4s, and 5s.
Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way.
The basic building blocks of pop harmony, which makes it that bright, almost too joyous carol we all know and listen to. So, to recap, Jingle Bells originally wasn't called Jingle Bells, it didn't have anything to do with Christmas, and it didn't really sound like it does today. And it still became one of the most popular songs on planet Earth. It was even the first song performed in space by two Gemini 6 astronauts in 1965, who smuggled a harmonica and sleigh bells into space to play the song.
Roger, Houston and Gemini 7, this is Gemini 6, stand by 1.
Which just goes to show for all the budding songwriters out there that if you don't get it right first time, just give it a little over 100 years of near legally enforced playing during the holiday season, and you too might just write that song that jingles all the way.
My name is John Solo, and if you're still looking for the perfect present to give to your true love this Christmas, I've got the shopping list you need right here. The only catch is your budget has to be around $41,205.58. Hey, it may sound like a lot right now, but the look on her face when you give her not one, not two, but 23 of her very own birds, it's gonna be so worth it. At least, that's what the guy who wrote the 12 Days of Christmas song must have thought, right? Why else would he have made half the gifts birds? Okay, in his defense, his lady may have had a thing for birds, or maybe she was a certified ornithologist. I have no idea. All I do know is that when I hinted at my wife that it would be kinda cool to raise 3 French hens, she wasn't down for it, which was a bummer because I didn't keep the receipt. We're not here to talk about what I had for dinner last night, though. I've always found the 12 Days of Christmas to be one of the weirder songs we sing at this time of year. It's long, repetitive, no one in their right mind would actually want the gifts being listed, and there's only one day of Christmas. Well, after looking into it some more, I learned 3 things. 1, I'm an uncultured swine, though you'd think I'd be well aware of that by now. 2, knowing where the song came from and how to sing it properly makes it a lot less obnoxious. And 3, there are several cultures around the world that have their own version of this crazy Christmas list. I cannot wait for you to see what this special holiday episode has in store. Before we get into where the 12 Days of Christmas song came from, we should probably establish what the 12 Days of Christmas actually are, because before doing the research for this episode, I had no idea. I always have just assumed it meant the 11 days leading up to Christmas and then Christmas Day, but I never knew for sure, and I didn't care enough to look into it. The 12 days are the time period between 2 major Catholic feasts, one celebrating the birth of Jesus on December 25th, and the other in honor of the 12-day journey the 3 wise men took to Bethlehem after they recognized him as the Son of God. Don't worry, I did the math. I know that's actually 13 days, but most people stop their counting on the 5th of January because the 13th day is the start of the next celebration. Some other Yuletime traditions that have been carried over are the Yule log, the Yule goat, the Yule boar, and Yule singing, also known as Christmas caroling. Maybe we could have left that one behind. Now that we all know what the 12 Days of Christmas refer to and where the holiday came from, let's talk about where the song itself originated. The earliest written version can be found in a children's book called Mirth Without Mischief, printed in Britain all the way back in 1780, and the lyrics go like this. Starting on the first day but ultimately ending up on the 12th, the final verse says, "The 12th day of Christmas my true love sent to me, 12 lords a-leaping, 11 ladies dancing, 10 pipers piping, 9 drummers drumming, 8 maids a-milking, 7 swans a-swimming, 6 geese a-laying, 5 golden rings, 4 collie birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and of course, a partridge in a pear tree." What's really interesting about this version is that it's remained mostly unchanged in the almost 250 years since it was printed. I know certain versions put the presents in a different order or replace some of the animals, but it's remained remarkably consistent compared to other nursery rhymes. Another fascinating factoid is that back when this version was sung, there was no official melody. The tune we sing today wasn't composed until 1909 by Frederick Austin, who published it in a songbook of its own. This songbook is also where he made the iconic changes like the 2-bar motif on 5 golden rings, adding on to the start of each new verse, the use of calling birds instead of collie birds in the aforementioned reordering of the 9th to 12th verses. It might be kind of weird to imagine such a classic song without its iconic melody, but in its early days, it may not have been so much a song as a memory game. We don't know for certain if it was created to be a game, but there's substantial written record of it being played as one during Christmas gatherings as early as the 1800s. In his 1842 collection, The Nursery Rhymes of England, James Halliwell Phillips describes the game as each child in succession repeats the gifts of the day and forfeits for each mistake. This accumulative process is a favorite with children. In other words, children and adults would stand in a circle and list off the gifts one at a time, but if you couldn't remember the answer when it got to be your turn, you lost. As I alluded to earlier, the Brits weren't the only ones with a song like this. We've actually found versions in Scotland, the Faroe Islands outside Denmark, and Sweden. So all countries where Yule was celebrated. How interesting. I'm not going to bother going through the almost 40 items listed, but some notable differences between these variants are the Faroe Islands version, which has 15 days of Christmas. The Swedish version puts a ton of emphasis on the 12th item listed, churches, and the Scottish variant ditches counting in order altogether and instead alternates between there being 1 and 3 of each item. Back to the traditional version though, we still haven't discussed where that wacky wish list came from, so let's talk about the potential significance of a partridge in a pear tree. Fun fact, every year PNC Financial releases an updated pricing index that breaks down the exact cost of the 12 days of Christmas. In 2021, if you were to buy every one of the 78 items listed, you would spend $41,205.58. But if you want to take it up a notch and buy the 364 gifts listed throughout every repetition of the song, it'll cost you $179,454.19. Either way, it's a little out of budget for most people. I mean, Seven Swans alone cost more than $13,000. So what exactly was the author thinking when he or she came up with this list? Well, if you were looking for a concrete explanation with supporting evidence, then you're going to be sorely disappointed. What I have instead is a highly debated theory that was proposed in 1979 by a Canadian hymnologist, Hugh McKellar, who floated the idea that the song was a secret code. In the Oxford Dictionary of Nursery Rhymes, Iona and Peter Opie, two of the most renowned folklorists in the entire field of study, suggest some alternative theories, but they don't seem particularly convinced by any of them. Suggestions have been made that the gifts have significance as representing the food or sport for each month of the year. Importance certainly has long been attached to the 12 days themselves when, for instance, the weather on each day was carefully observed to see what it would be in the corresponding month of the coming year. Nevertheless, whatever the ultimate origin of the chant, it seems probable that the lines that survive today, both in England and France, are merely an irreligious travesty. In other words, when the song first came into existence hundreds of years ago, the items and animals listed may have been associated with seasonal, religious, and holiday traditions. Over the course of centuries, those traditions changed or died out completely, and the lyrics of the song likely changed as well, since nobody wrote anything down in those days.
Most Christmas songs are old, like really old.
Merry Christmas to you.
The bulk of the seasonal classics date back to the 60s or earlier, some going as far back as the 16th century. But there's one striking exception to this rule.
Don't want a lot for Christmas.
That anthem is, of course, Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You, the most successful holiday song of the last 50 years. And it's only getting more popular. On Christmas Eve 2018, it broke Spotify's single-day streaming record. Stars just as big as Mariah put out their own holiday songs every year, but few have managed to become staples like this one. What makes All I Want for Christmas the only modern holiday classic? The secret? It doesn't sound like it belongs to a single era. Instead, it embraces musical traditions that range from the 19th century Nutcracker to 60s rock and roll. The opening to All I Want for Christmas is, by now, iconic. You know exactly what song you're listening to as soon as you hear those 13 opening chimes. That tinkling percussion comes from the celesta, an instrument that gets its name from its magical or celestial sound. It's the same instrument you hear at the beginning of a much older Christmas melody, penned by one of the most famous Russian composers of all time. Tchaikovsky's Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy is maybe the most iconic musical number from the Nutcracker Ballet. Tchaikovsky chose the celesta for its glittering, crystal-like sound, which stirs up childlike images of sugar and snowflakes. While the instrument was pretty unknown at the time of the first Nutcracker, it soon became a staple of early 20th century Christmas music, and by now has come to signify all those delightful things we associate with the holidays. Back in 1892, Tchaikovsky made the unconventional choice to have this delicate little instrument open the dance alone, with the rest of the orchestra gradually coming in to join it, creating a sense of growing excitement, like the feeling of counting down the days until Christmas morning. All I Want for Christmas achieves the same effect with its slowly building intro, which layers new musical elements on top of the celesta one by one. First come in the bed of keyboards, and dramatic church bells, then driving sleigh bells, and rock and roll piano. When the full instrumentation finally comes in, it's a big, opulent symphony of sounds. Mariah's co-writer, Walter Afanasieff, said the song's maximalist production was inspired by one influential figure from the 60s. Phil Spector was an innovating producer who developed this so-called wall of sound, a recording and mixing technique that turned pop and rock songs into huge orchestral productions. He'd get big ensembles together in the studio and have several musicians play similar versions of the same instrument, tripling the parts to create a lush and dense sound. Some have pointed out the similarity between All I Want for Christmas and an original single off Spector's album, Christmas Baby Please Come Home. The song was first performed by Darlene Love and became a classic that's since been covered by rockers like U2 and Bruce Springsteen. And even by Mariah herself. And we can't forget the vocal arrangement.
Baby, all I want for Christmas is you.
Mariah wouldn't want us to. She's attributed her song's enduring success to its Motown-style backup vocals.
And I don't care about the presents underneath the Christmas tree.
Those catchy backing harmonies are layered on especially heavily in the tag,
All I want for Christmas is you.
and the bridge.
Santa, won't you please
And they add a 60s flavor to the song that help it transcend the 90s R&B era when it was made. These stacked harmonies harken back to 60s girl groups like the Ronettes, the rock and roll trio that collaborated closely with Phil Spector. Mariah paid homage to the Ronettes in the second music video for All I Want, with a retro outfit and a host of go-go dancers. Okay, but what about the many years in between Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker and Phil Spector's Christmas Gift? Mariah takes plenty of inspiration from that period too. For one, let's take a closer look at the song's structure. Notice it doesn't have a multi-line chorus like most contemporary pop songs. Instead, between the intro and outro, there are 3 A verses, which have the same melody and each end in the tagline, All I Want for Christmas is You. The A verses are contrasted by a bridge, or B verse, which has a different melody. This AABA form dominated popular music in the 40s and 50s, the decades that produced many of the Christmas classics now included in the Great American Songbook.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Lights are turned down low. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
Beginning in the 60s, though, the classic AABA form began to decline in popularity. Instead, pop songs were increasingly written in verse-chorus form. This structure is exactly what it sounds like: verse, chorus, and so on. For an example, listen to Ariana Grande's 2014 single, Santa Tell Me.
Santa, tell me if you're really there. Feeling Christmas all around. Santa, tell me if you're really there. I've been down this road before.
The structure of All I Want for Christmas doesn't look much like this song, or for that matter, any other typical modern pop hit. It more closely resembles the 40s and 50s songs that fill up the permanent Christmas canon. What are the holidays if not nostalgic? It makes sense that the most loved festive songs usually sound kind of old. All I Want for Christmas pulls from a diverse set of holiday musical traditions, so much that you can't really pinpoint it in any specific era. And that's exactly the type of song that people turn to year after year.